Everyone. So very great to have you here. We're going to get started in about 2 minutes. We're just going to give everybody the opportunity, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, if you're in your car, if you're at home, if you're still at work behind the computer, we want to give you everyone the opportunity to just settle in about 2 minutes, and then we are going to get started. We see a lot of our friends here. Shout out to everybody who is here all across the nation, people as far west as Oregon, people as far north as Maine, New Hampshire. We got Massachusetts that's in the house. Connecticut is always in the house. We got the Chi in the house. Shout out to the Chi. We just really appreciate everybody being here with the Reform Alliance during our inaugural town hall. We are in for a very, very, very exciting event tonight. You are going to hear from some very dynamic leaders in the social and criminal justice reform space. I don't want to give it away, but stay right here. Don't touch that dial. Do not move. Make sure your Wi-Fi is connected. Make sure you got all of the bars on your phone because we don't want you to miss a solitary thing. Stay tuned. You are at the right place at the right time with the right people. Again, for those of you who are joining us, thank you so very much for being with us. This is the Reform Alliance. I will introduce myself momentarily, but you are at the right place at the right time. You are now rocking with the best. Stand by. Our program will be underway momentarily. Thank you again. Again, everyone, thank you so much for joining. We see people tuning in from all across the nation, in some parts of the world. Thank you so very much for being here with us tonight on this Thursday evening, 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 3:30 p.m. Pacific Time. Thank you so very much. I can't do the math if you are tuning in from Hawaii. I can't do the math to figure out what time it is there, but we appreciate you being on and with us this evening, this morning, this afternoon, wherever you are. Thank you so very much for being with us. Stay tuned. So awesome. We have a great group that has joined us. So without further ado, we are going to get started. Allow me to reintroduce myself. I've been wanting to say that for such a long period of time since I've been here at the Reform Alliance. My name is Louis L. Reed, Senior Director of Memberships and Partnerships here at Reform Alliance. And my job is to recruit, engage, and mobilize people who are on the ground, people who are connected to the issue, people who are closest to the problem. And we are so very grateful to have you here with us this evening. On behalf of the entire Reform Alliance family, we want to welcome you. And we want to talk just a little bit about what our program is going to be tonight. You are going to hear from some dynamic, thoughtful, experienced leaders. First and foremost, you're going to hear from our CEO, Robert Rooks. Robert is a very tenured person and a star in his own right. He's built national coalitions all across the country, and he's just all around invested in the work of social and criminal justice reform. Next, you are going to hear from Jessica Jackson, whose name you might be familiar with. And if you are not familiar with her name, you are more than probably familiar with her work. She's passed a numerous amount of bills across the nation that includes dignity for incarcerated women, the Federal First Step Act, and she's here at the Reform Alliance working on probation and parole reform supervision. But more importantly, we want to hear from you, our members, also known as reformers. You guys are the linchpin. You are the hinge by which our door swings on every day here at the Reform Alliance, and you are such an integral part of the work that we do. Our reformers have attended bill signings. You've shared our content on social media. You've called legislators. You tweeted at them. You've knocked on their doors in some instances. You've done everything that you can do to support the legislation in your respective states, specifically to probation and or parole reform. And we are extremely thankful for your partnership and your collaboration. And so, again, you're going to hear from Robert Rooks, who is our CEO. You're going to hear from Jessica Jackson. You're going to hear from me at the end of our call as well. But primarily, we want to introduce our organization to you, and we want to share some of our legislative wins and some of our priorities for 2022 to you, for you, and with you. Let me just remind you, during the call, if you have any questions or comments, please utilize the Q&A button, and we will make sure that we answer as many questions as we can. Look, I know that you're tired of hearing from me, and so without further ado, I want to introduce our CEO, Robert Rooks, to talk about who we are as an organization and what we have accomplished thus far. Robert Rooks, CEO, Reform Alliance. Robert, please take it away.
Hey everyone, so good to be here with you. Louis Reed, thank you so much. You're an amazing organizer. Thank you to Jessica Jackson and Jasmine, the entire organizing team. I also have deep appreciation to the ambassadors and the organizers and the partners on the ground all over the country that help make this town hall possible. This is the first Reform Town Hall. You are here, you are helping us make history. Let me tell you a little bit about myself. I've been at Reform for all of 1 year. I am living the dream. Reform is an amazing organization. My inspiration came from years back in 1980s and 90s, where I saw my neighborhood go from picnics in the backyard to batons and police and incarceration. We were impacted by the crack epidemic. Instead of getting treatment and real help, we got incarceration. That's what we got. And then years later, we started to go to funerals. And it was at my best friend's funeral that I made a commitment to make change, to make sure the next generation experiences things different than our current generation at that time. I don't know how we're doing about that, but we're working really hard to make that a reality. And that's my inspiration for being here at Reform. Reform is an amazing organization that's made significant impact in a short period of time. I'm excited about Reform. It's one of the few organizations in this country that came together to change laws and policies whose story was inspired by a single Black man, Meek Mill. Because of Meek's story, influencers from across the country came together and not just worked to get Meek out of prison, worked to make sure that others don't experience what Meek experienced. That is the birth of Reform. And we've been doing everything we can to make that a reality ever since. In a short period of time, just 3 years, Reform has passed 13 bills in 8 states. We've had impact upwards of 500,000 people exiting the system all throughout the country, but we're just beginning. We're going to do more than just change laws. We're also going to roll up our sleeves in communities to ensure that governments and organizations see us as full and committed partners. That's what we were able to do in Madison Square Garden last November. We organized an event where 6,000 people came to the garden looking for jobs. It was a job fair. When you walked in the job fair, you saw individuals getting their haircut. We gave away 300 suits. In the middle of the job fair, people were being trained on resume writing and how to interview. We had an expungement clinic on the left, and most importantly, people walked out of there with real jobs. It made me think of a young man named Skip. Skip was just released 2 weeks ago, and he walked in the job fair and left with a job at UPS. So yeah, we're working to change laws, but we're also rolling our sleeves to ensure that we help address real problems on the ground, like the lack of employment many people coming out of the system face. I'm so thrilled to have you here. I'm so thrilled to be engaging with you in this space. We have an amazing team, as you'll meet, and the work has just begun. So I want to send it back to Louis. Louis, thank you so much for creating this space, and let's keep going.
Thanks, Robert. I really do appreciate that. Look, let me say this. One of the mottos that we have here, we got a lot of mottos at Reform Alliance, right? But it's never about the individual. It's always about the collective, i.e. it's not about the me, but it's always about the we. And so we would not have been able to pass all of those bills, 13 bills in 8 states and having an impact of upwards of 500,000 people without having you as a part of our Reform Alliance family. And so to talk a little bit more about that 500,000 numbers and the bills by which we've passed in those states where we passed them, I want to turn it over to Jessica Jackson, our Chief Advocacy Officer, who's going to talk about our policy victories and what's next.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us tonight. So 500,000 people. Just take a pause and think about that number. That's a lot of people. That's a lot of people who now can go back and forth to work, can go out of the county, can go to their grandma's dinner where their cousin, who also has had a charge at one point, might be. That's a lot of families, a lot of kids who don't have to worry about mom or dad, being picked up at any point and taken back into custody. So that's a really big number, but it's not big enough. We have a long way to go, and we're committed to getting there. So first, I'll talk a little bit about myself, my personal connection to this issue. I myself was never incarcerated, but I was impacted by incarceration. Sadly, when my daughter was only 2 months old, her dad, who was then my husband, ended up getting incarcerated. He served 3.5 years, which destroyed our marriage. But even though our marriage was destroyed, my commitment to this issue was not, because I had seen firsthand how it really impacts families, how it really impacts individuals, and the pain that it caused him and caused my daughter and caused me. I have to say I was really excited to come over to Reform, because while his incarceration was painful, nothing was as eye-opening as when he got a technical violation while on probation and was picked up and taken back to the state of Georgia from where he had relocated in Florida and put in custody for 60 days. Now, the technical violation turned out to be nothing. They try to say he hadn't been reporting when he had, but we definitely learned a lot about the system, and we learned how defeating it can be to somebody who has come home, who has gotten an apartment, who has gotten a job, who has gotten back on their feet, who's back in their kid's life, who's trying to move forward and put their past behind them, to then be just picked up and taken back to jail or prison. That was, a punch to the stomach that I don't think any of us knew was coming, and we could never have anticipated. So I am so happy to work at Reform, where I can work on things like getting rid of technical violations and other policy priorities. So I think with that, we'll go over a little bit exactly what it is we're doing to transform the probation and parole system. This is what we call our Prison to Freedom pipeline. This is basically our policy agenda. And I want to be very clear, not every bill we have, in fact, no bill we have is ever going to have all of these things in them. But for each of the states that we're working in, this is the goal. We want to see this happen. We want to take as many people out from behind bars, many people who are on supervision, move them through the system, and get them the wellness and the support that they need to actually succeed, because we know that the current system is not helping anybody actually succeed. In fact, in a lot of cases, it's making whatever problems drove them to commit the crime in the first place worse, right? We're not getting people access to mental health care. We're not getting people access to substance abuse treatment, et cetera. We're not helping people get jobs in the system we have today. So what we want to do is we want to flip this thing on its head. We want to change what we're investing in and stop investing in prisons, start investing in people. So we start with the incarceration pillar. So we want to work on youth parole. We want to work on elder parole. We want to work on medical parole. It's not on here, but we also want to work on capping. How long can you sit in a prison cell before you actually get to go to a parole hearing? We want to change the composition of the parole board, right? There should be formerly incarcerated people on every single parole board, because they know exactly what it's going to take to succeed, and they know where people are at when they're having conversations with them in prison. We also want to make transparent parole decisions. I can't tell you how many people I know have gone to the parole board and been denied and told, come back in 5 years. and there's no reason or rhyme why, right? They just send the person away and don't tell them what they need to do differently. What if every single person who walked into prison had a plan? You take this class, you do this, you work on this, you do this treatment, then you're going to be considered a high priority for parole, right? And then we want to keep people out of the system in the first place, right? We want to create alternatives to probation. We did this in California. We created an alternative to misdemeanor probation that's now being implemented. We're going to collect the data from that and take that bill on a tour around the country, right? Try and get that implemented as many places as possible. Hopefully we can even, find ways to get felony probation as well, get alternatives. The second pillar is really from ineffective to smart supervision. I would say, like, turning that from supervision to mentorship, being able to shorten the length of time. So this is often known as caps. There's hard caps, there's soft caps. Some of the places we're working, we have to work to try and get a soft cap, just an opportunity for a person to be able to have their probation reviewed and meet certain criteria to get it terminated. I would much rather see a hard cap, 1 year for misdemeanors, 2 years for felonies is what we did in California. That was transformative for so many lives in California. AB 1950 that capped probation. So many people got off probation, and so many more people are not going to serve the incredibly crazy long lengths that they would have because of that bill. We also want to see graduated responses that prevent unnecessary incarceration. So that's sort of the wordy way of saying we don't want any more technical violations. Why are people getting put in prisons and jails because they missed a meeting, or they left the county, they had to go to their grandma's house, they had to, go somewhere else and pick up their kid? Why are we saying that you can't associate with somebody who has a criminal record while you're on probation, or else you'll go back to jail? We hear these stories every day. We believe that we should get rid of technical violations. We're working towards that. We also think that the uniform list of conditions that are imposed on anybody who's on probation are ridiculous. They're unnecessary. They don't match the needs of that individual, and we need to get rid of just the blanket conditions. We also want to see more due process and fairness in the decision making, and see a real move towards restorative justice. Our final pillar is from supervision to wellness. So we want to have community-based groups offer their services in lieu of probation, right? What if instead of walking into a probation office, you walked into an office where there was somebody to assess you and help you get a job and put you in job training? There was somebody to help you find housing, because we know how hard it is for somebody who's system impacted to find housing with a criminal record. What if there was somebody who could help with assessing your mental health and get you into counseling or whatever programs you needed? Somebody who could help with substance abuse and getting you into treatment. That's what we want this to look like. We want it to look like people getting the supports they need so that they can succeed. One thing I'll say is, oftentimes when we're working on these bills, we're working in a coalition. We're working with a broad group of people that have all sorts of different, come to this issue from all sorts of different angles. You've got business leaders who maybe are talking about this or they're supporting this because their employees are on probation and have to leave for half a day every time they have to go report. You've got faith leaders who believe in redemption and grace and come to it from that angle. You've got conservatives who are saying this is a big failed bureaucracy and we need more transparency and more fiscal responsibility because we're spending so much money on a system that's so broken. And then you've got folks like Lewis and Robert and myself and many of you that come to it from personal experience or from the grassroots. And we believe that this system is breaking families and breaking people and, really just destroying human dignity on a very basic level. So you have all these different people coming together in our coalition, and that's what makes our approach so powerful, because then we can talk to a whole lot of different lawmakers that are there. But unfortunately, you know, a lot of the time we don't share the same language. So you'll see we have to message and talk to everybody in their own way. We might have to talk about how much the system costs. We might have to tell stories about the personal impact to create that empathy for people. We might have to talk about, you know, how bloated the system is, or the lack of transparency, because we want to put the message out there in every language for every coalition member, for every member of the state house that we're working in, that they will understand and realize that this is a system that needs to be taken apart and replaced with one that actually helps people succeed. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Louis again and just say thank you guys so much. We need your support. We can't do this alone. Me, Louis, Robert, walking, you know, the rest of the reform staff, walking around the halls of these state houses, that doesn't equal real legislation being passed. That is just a few of us talking to some lawmakers. We need to show them that there are people out there in their communities that really, really care about this issue, that really want to see this done. People who vote, people who tell their friends to vote, people who have a voice in the community. And we can't do that without you. So you see on the screen right now some of the states that we've worked in or are working in. Currently, we've got bills in Pennsylvania. We're trying to defeat 2 really bad bills in Virginia. We've got legislation in Florida, and we've got legislation in Iowa. These bills are all pieces of that puzzle that you saw earlier. It's not everything, it's some pieces of it. And then, of course, in Virginia, we're trying to protect the wins that we got last year that created a pathway for 60,000 people to get off of probation. So we need your help. We've also got a federal bill. We really, really need your help calling lawmakers in these states if you live there, or helping us with that federal bill to reform federal supervision.
Thank you, Jessica. Look, there's nobody who I know that can articulate what the policy needs are for people who have been systems impacted, like how you can and like how you just did. So I appreciate you. Look, and I also was remiss. I'm seeing the chat. I was remiss not to shout out Detroit. Brooklyn is always in the house. Boston, shout out to the folks out in Boston. Shout out to the folks out in Philly. I was in Philly all week long, and shout out to the people in New York. Look, I can't bring out a map and shout everybody out. So if you were in the building, just shout yourself out in the chat, and believe me, we're monitoring the chat and we see where you are. And so with that having been said, I want to toss it over to Alex Gudich, who's going to select and facilitate our Q&A right now, so that we can hear from you. You've heard from us, but we want to hear from you. We want to hear what your burning questions are. We want to hear what your comments are. We want to hear if whether or not you need any clarification. So without further ado, Alex Gudich, please facilitate the Q&A.
Well, thanks, guys. If you have questions, just type them into the Q&A. First question is from Shannon. This is an easy one. Will the town hall be recorded and available for us to watch and share again? Answer that. I'll take that one. Actually, the answer to that question is yes. If you're not following us on social media, please do. I'm hopeful that maybe Tralisha or somebody else from our team can post links to our social handles in the chat so folks can just easily click and follow. I've got the next question from Derek. Derek's in Florida. He says, when it comes to the state of parole and technical parole violations, it's really just absolutely terrible in the state of Florida. Is reform doing anything to change that? He says on average, it's about between 18 and 20 years of incarceration. No exaggeration. So we desperately need reform in Florida, and he's willing to do whatever he can to help. Jessica, you want to talk about Florida?
Yeah, I'll just say, look, we're in a difficult political climate right now. We've got a bill down in Florida. It does not touch parole, but we are 100% in agreement with you that that is what is needed. One of the many things that is needed down in Florida. This bill that we have is education credits and credits for the workforce. I'll say that since I've been doing this work for the last 17 years, it has gotten more difficult to pass legislation recently. You had a pandemic that left a lot of people without jobs. So we've got unemployment is very high right now. We've got a perception out there that there is a wave of crime going on, and lawmakers are scared to touch this issue. So this is the first of many bills that we're going to be doing in Florida. I see it as a bill that we're using to build our coalition, to build our relationships with legislators down there, to show them that this is still a safe issue for them to be working on, and to build a relationship with the governor as well, whose signature we're going to need and who is likely going to run for president, and doesn't want to be seen as, soft on crime. We got to show him it's not soft on crime to do any of these reforms. It's smart on crime, because if you're investing in people instead of prisons, you're going to get much better outcomes when it comes to public safety. So we are going to continue to work. We're not working on parole right now, but we would love for you to join our coalition and help us get to the point where we can introduce a bill like that and we can make a real impact for people there.
Thank you, Jessica. I've got a next question from Dave Buck in Philly, and he says, what would it take to get an event or a job fair down here in Philadelphia? Furthermore, what can reformers do to see this happen? And then we got another reformer in Philly, R3 LLC, who says, how can I volunteer in Philly?
I guess, Robert.
Yeah, Robert or Lewis.
I'll take on the job fair question, and Louis, you take on the volunteer. Hey, we are in the process of planning 4 to 5 job fairs this year. We have not picked the location yet, so you put your name in early, and I appreciate your city in, and I appreciate that. We're going to fundraise, and as soon as we hit that number, we'll be in Philly, and we'll be in other parts of the country. So I so appreciate you asking about that, and we want to do these all over the country because we know people need work and people need stability, and a pathway to that is employment. And from a reform perspective, we want to make sure more than anything else that people can be there for their family and provide for their family. And so let's partner with that for sure.
Yeah, and as it relates to the community volunteering piece, look, Philadelphia is our origin city. Meek Mill, his situation actually predicated from Philadelphia. So Philadelphia is near and dear to my heart, to our hearts, just like, other cities throughout the country. If you want to stay connected with us, if you want to volunteer, if you want to just be closer to and with reform, first and foremost, we appreciate you wanting to be closer to us. It's very simple. Stay tuned until the end, and I'm going to give you a personal number on how to get in contact with us, how to stay connected to us. This is just a little of a teaser so that you do not click off the broadcast. Stay tuned until the end, and I promise you will find a personal number in order to stay connected to the Reform Alliance family.
I got multiple questions in the chat from Alabama, from New Jersey, from South Dakota, from what's this state here? How can reform get involved in my state? We need help. Our system is broken. Our state wasn't listed on the map where you're working. What's going on?
Yeah. So there's a lot of states that are not listed on the map that really need reform, especially, I heard Alabama in there. That's my birth state. So we know that there's a lot that's needed to be done. This year, we're actually working, our policy team is working hard on putting together sort of model policies. We're going to be rolling them out, and we would love to have your help doing that, and your helping us identify state legislators that can then take those model policies and introduce them as bills. We would provide technical assistance to them to help them pass those bills. But we're hoping that we can show, in the states that we're in, we can get the data and the evidence that shows that these are solutions that work. These are solutions that make all of us safer. These are solutions that help people succeed and help them get back on their feet, and help them thrive. And once we have that data and that evidence, then we definitely want to roll out these model policies and impact as many states as we possibly can.
Thanks for that, Jessica. I got a question from Lucas Myers. He says, has reform ever considered building an API, which is a technology interface around data systems to help with data sources in the criminal justice system? He also is a yoga instructor in Chino, a facility in California. And he also says we don't have a GitHub presence. So what are we doing around kind of using technology to improve the system? Or Robert, maybe you can take this one.
Yeah, so one of the things I love about reform is we do a good job of staying in our lane, right? Like our goal is to reform the probation and parole system, to transform the probation and parole system. But you're right, we need technology partners in order to do that, because some of the data systems are so out of date that we can pass laws, and because some systems, specifically I know in Alabama, are still operating off of Excel, right? It's really hard to keep track of what changes happen and how those changes are being implemented at the court level. And so we don't do that work, but we do partner with organizations that are leading the way and updating, the data system. Recidiviz is one of the leading ones. It's actually a technology-based company that's working with government systems and trying to transform those data systems. So that was a very good question. We stay in our lane, but we are looking to partner with groups that have that type of expertise, so we can ensure that all the systems we're working in are updated and make our change real.
Thanks. I'm seeing over 100 questions in this chat, guys. So there's no way that. Thank you all for the engagement and for the love. I see a lot of people shouting out members of our staff who've been very helpful. I really appreciate that. Maybe Louis, you can take this one. I think it's a great question. How can the Black church be an advocate for people impacted by the criminal justice system?
Yeah, look, I think that one of the things that Jessica brushed up against is how we speak to the issue and the different languages by which we have to speak to the issue from. And integral, particularly to, African-American Black folks who've been disproportionately impacted by the system. The Black church has always been just key and the chief cornerstone of our community. And the Black church has always been, part of the fabric of who we are as a culture and part of the fabric as who we are as a people. And so one of the things that I would do is encourage people who are attending churches, specifically in Black communities, is to really call your leaders in on being involved in this. My grandmama used to say, if you want to call somebody out on something, you better be calling them into something greater, and you better be calling them up to something higher. So I would call those leaders in to what it is that you want to see in your respective communities. I would love to be able to hear from you. If you want to just, shoot me a DM on Twitter so that I can hear from you and hear what community you're in, hear what congregation and or faith that you are connected to. Look, let's work. I'm one of them cats where, I don't mind rolling up my sleeve. Neither does Jessica nor Robert. We're all in this together, man. And we believe that a faith-based approach to this work is just as integral as any other approach to this work that we employ in order to get our people free, without question.
Thank you. I think I only have time for one or two more. This is another good one. David Goldstein asks, what work is being done to train and enhance the skills of probation and parole officers who are at the front lines of some of this stuff? Who wants to take that one?
I can take that one. So one of the things that Robert did, Robert came in as CEO last March. One of the things that he did that I think we all really appreciate on staff is that he brought in a new research and implementation team. And one of the members of that research and implementation team is actually a former probation officer herself. So she's got deep ties into the community of probation officers. And we've been working very closely with several of them to build out a program that would take some of the best practices that there are in the field and work to bring those to probation offices across the country. Of course, a big part of this is really changing the culture of those probation offices, right? I think law enforcement in general has a certain culture, and we really want to open them up to the idea of, using the time that somebody is on probation to really get them the support they need, and working with the community-based services and groups and getting them that mentorship, as opposed to getting them violations and more prison and jail time. So we've got somebody who's working on figuring out how you can change the culture in those offices and how we can bring them the best practices and the evidence to support implementing them.
Thank you. I'm seeing a lot of questions from people that we know, so I won't answer those questions. You guys can reach out to us, and we're happy to answer them. But I also see a lot of people with loved ones who are incarcerated, and I look at our DMs on social media. I see a lot of desperate families asking for help, and I just want maybe somebody can address. I want to first of all acknowledge the folks who are on the call who are in that situation, but there are also other comments like, are we doing anything to help people who are incarcerated get a better credit score, so when they're released, they have a chance to actually get housing or get a credit card? Maybe we can talk a little bit more to that.
Yeah, Alex, I can actually take that. One of the things that we are doing through our memberships and partnerships department is to build those resources for people who have been systems impacted, not those who are recently returning from incarceration, but people who have been in the community who may not have been incarcerated, but walked out of a courtroom with a felony conviction. And they're trying to make sense of the world now with the so-called scarlet letter on their legal history. And so we're stockpiling resources that you're going to hear at the end of my remarks, but we're stockpiling resources that actually includes credit repair, financial services, in addition to, just other things that's going to help create a springboard for opportunity and successes for these folks, rather than perpetuating these trapdoors to failure that they've been exposed to.
And I'll just jump in and piggyback off of Lewis. I know that, Alex, you said there's a lot of people in the chat who have loved ones who are incarcerated. And I just want to say, look, I've been walking the halls up in these state houses and up on Capitol Hill for a long time now. And so is Lewis and Robert. And I got to say that nobody is a better advocate than somebody who has lived experience. If you have been directly impacted, if you have a loved one who is in prison or jail, or if you've been inside prison or jail or on probation or parole, please, please, please join us, because I can say a lot of things as a lawyer, but I will never make the same impact that you will in terms of talking about your personal story and just getting these legislators to associate a different face to this issue and to open up their hearts and have some empathy so they can open up their minds and change some of these laws.
And just to continue to piggyback, there's no better time than right now. Like right now is when we need you most. Legislators across the country are saying that the criminal justice reform movement is over, right? They're talking about spikes in crime rates as reason to not engage in this issue, right? We need to make sure we're in their face, capital after capital after capital. We need to be making phone calls, sending emails, knocking on doors, talking to legislators about real change, and we need you to do that. Right, and we need you to help organize other people to do that. We will win, but we'll win through numbers. We'll win because we have more numbers, we have more influence, we have more than what they have. And right now, we need to build that. So thank you all for coming. I really, truly appreciate just the energy you brought with those questions. I truly appreciate the numbers. I mean, we have close to over 300 people on here. It's really extraordinary to see those numbers across the country. Lewis, again, thank you. Thank you for all your work. Your team, Jessica, doing amazing work, but let's continue to build on it and bring real change to people.
Thanks so much, Robert. So look, everyone, you've heard from our CEO, Robert Rooks. You've heard his passion, and you heard him talk about all of the great things that we've accomplished as an organization thus far in 3 years, but we still have a long way to go. And the only way that we are going to be able to get to that destination, the destination where we free the approximate 5 million people who are under some form of supervision in this country, that's going to be with the support and help of you. You've also heard from Jessica Jackson, our Chief Advocacy Officer, talking about our legislative wins and our legislative priorities for 2022 as well. You've also heard her talk about her personal impact to this work. as a lawyer, as a mother, as a chief advocacy officer, as someone who's walked the halls of power, how closely it is that she's connected to the issue as well. But what you have not heard from is how you can become a reformer and ways you can support the work on the ground. And so with that having been said, there is a way that you can stay connected with us. Look, like Alex just talked about, our DMs are always open. We want to hear from you. We want to hear your commentary. We want to hear your feedback. We want to hear your questions. We want to hear your story of experience. More importantly, we want you to become a reformer. And how you can do that is very simple. You can text the word reform to 81411. Look, reform, even if you don't know how to spell it, it's on my hat. It's in back of me. It was blazing across Robert's sweatshirt. Text the word reform to 81411. By doing so, you are going to gain exclusive access to concerts, festivals, and other membership benefits, and also grant opportunities as well. Look, if you have a nonprofit organization or you're doing similar work on the ground in your state, we want to hear from you. We want to learn from you, and we want to just keep our fingers on the pulse of the community. We want to be able to help the people who are helping the people who need the help. That is what we are here to do, in addition to transforming laws and transforming minds. What you have not heard from also is me. Some of you know me, some of you may not know me. Very briefly, let me talk to you a little bit about my connection to the work. I served 14 years in federal prison. I also served approximately 3 years, both on federal and state supervision. So I know all too well the panic, the fear, the anxiety that you get when you're walking into those probation offices, not necessarily knowing if whether or not you are going to return, even though you haven't committed a new crime. You face the constant just anxiety of thinking, feeling that your freedom is going to be compromised, that you're going to be back on that 4 o'clock count, that you're going to be back in that cell eating ramen noodle soup, having 15-minute telephone calls and half-an-hour intervals, having to connect with your family behind a plexiglass. I know what that's like, man. I know what it's like. And so what we are trying to do at Reform Alliance is make sure that those, like my longtime mentor says, those closest to the problem, who are closest to the solution, but furthest from resources and power, that we help bridge that gap. And the only way that we're going to be able to bridge that gap is in the communities of Philadelphia, is in the communities of the Chicagos of the world, is in the communities of the Detroits and the Bostons, and yes, even the Bridgeports of Connecticut of the world. We want to make sure that we are connected to all 4 corners of this country and everywhere in between. And the only way that we're going to be connected with you is if you stay connected with us. How you stay connected with us, again, is by texting the word reform to 81411. Look, if you got these nonprofit organizations and you're doing similar work, we want to hear from you. Complete the form that is in the chat right now. We are dropping a community partnership form in the chat, and we want to hear from you. We want to hear from you. We want to be connected with you. And again, we are going to be launching a national grant program for people who are supporting the folks who are in the community as well. You heard from our CEO, you heard him mention that we want to seek to change hearts and minds. And you've also heard Jessica Jackson mention, most important, members are those with lived experience. And we would not be able to do this work without you being alongside of us. We want to hear from your personal experience, your personal stories. So please also fill out the survey that is also in the chat as well. We want to hear from you. We want to hear from your stories. We can't get it into everyone who commented in the chat and who commented during the Q&A section, but I promise you, I can give you my personal promise that we will not leave you unheard. We will be reaching out to you. We want to make sure that we stay connected to you. So there are ways that you can stay connected to us, and that way is texting reform to 81411. Community partners, please fill out the community partner form in the chat. And if you have a personal story that you want us to hear from, please make sure you fill out that personal story form in the chat as well. Look, I don't want to keep you too much longer. You've been a gracious audience. We've hoped that we've been a gracious a host for you and to you as well. This is just the beginning. We're just scratching the surface. You will hear from us. We'll be having faith-based town halls. We'll be having a community-based town halls. This is just the beginning. It is not the end. Until next time, you have been with the Reform Alliance on behalf of our CEO, Robert Rooks, Jessica Jackson, and the entire Reform Alliance family. My grandmama used to say, everybody related ain't family, and everybody who's family you don't have to be related to. On behalf of the entire Reform Alliance family, thank you so very much. You guys stay safe, stay healthy, and stay free. Until next time, I'm Louis L. Reed. Peace.